Happy to be talking with Congressman Greg Pence this morning here on the air. And Congressman, talk a little bit about the events in Tulsa, Oklahoma this weekend. You were there. Your observations, your thoughts.
Yeah, good morning, John. Good morning, everybody out there listening. I went out as a surrogate to the president to support him and his reopening of the campaign. We had the rally on Saturday night. Both the vice president and the vice president came out. It was a good rally. It was pretty exciting. It's interesting. You watch the news, and they claim there are only 6,200 people there. Well, I can tell you there were a lot more than 6,200 people there. Tulsa, Oklahoma is a little smaller than I thought. It's about a 400,000 people city. Unlike when the president would come to Cincinnati or, of course, Southport up in Indianapolis, where we have a 1.5 million population to pull from. So it really was a little smaller than they thought it would be for a number of reasons. The weather didn't delay, but the enthusiasm was absolutely there. It was exciting, as the many, many that I've been to. John, people have asked me, how many of these have you been to? And in the last 5.5 years, in support of my brother and the president, I can't really remember, but it's been a bunch.
Talking with Congressman Greg Pence this morning. Congressman, how about an update on the transportation and infrastructure bill? What can you share with us on that?
Yeah, John. As we continue to battle the pandemic, the economic crisis, and of course some of the social issues that have come to the forefront as well. My job as a congressman for the Indiana 6th District, serving on the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, I went out to Washington, D.C. last week, and we what they call marked up the Democrats' bill, which is a $500 billion transportation bill. And I'm sadly going to report to you, John, that 17 Republicans, 2 Democrats out of 68 people showed up and sat there and debated for 14 hours, 2 days in a row. So obviously, I had to do a lot more debating than other folks. I actually, in my opening statement, said it's a shame that so few Congress people come out here when firemen, policemen, hospital, grocery store, seed store, yourself, John, we're all working. Of course, in Indiana, we're back up and going, but the House of Representatives can't show up. That's still, as I've mentioned before on this show, that really, really disappoints me. And so I said, I guess we're just going to zoom in our votes, and then of course we have proxy voting. But let me tell you what we talked about. I introduced 14 bills. I'll just give you some highlights. 3 of them were rural infrastructure. As we've had the pandemic hit us, kids went home and had to do remote learning. We have doctors and hospitals and medical remote. And, of course, from the very beginning in my support of rural broadband, we need rural broadband to be expanded for fire and safety as well. And so I introduced 3 markups there. I also, critical commerce corridors. I believe we ought to do some testing of getting the trucks into their own lane on the interstate. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing I have, John. We're driving up and down I-65, and the trucks are slowing down. Some of them are governed back to 60 miles an hour, and frankly, I think it's a safety issue. I also did a consolidated rail infrastructure safety program. I'm trying to get an increased funding for railroad crossings. Not only did I introduce a markup last week, but I also introduced the Rural American Line Act, which raises funding for the crossings in rural America from $7,500 to $100,000. Most of this bill, getting back to the infrastructure bill that we were considering, I'm sorry to say that over 40% of it was just for green, but more importantly, 90+% of it was just for big urban areas, and rural America was getting left out. And I made a number of points about that in my remarks and in my amendments that I offered last week.
Talking with Congressman Greg Pence this morning here on AM Columbus. Congressman, you touched on it briefly about the Hoosier Rail Crossing legislation, and of course that's of high interest here in Columbus area in particular, with concerns about rail crossings leading to a bridge being built. But anything more on the process of that regarding the crossings?
Well, like I said, I did introduce with a Democrat on a bipartisan basis last week the Rural Act, and hopefully that'll get to the floor, and that will increase funding to rural America for these crossings. Hopefully that will come to the floor, and the whole House will vote on this. We're also trying to get, and I think we will have, some support from Mike Braun in the Senate to introduce that same bill there. We were still working on the details last week, so it wasn't quite a Senate and House bill, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get that done. So we're working hard on getting that done for Columbus and every other community here in southern Indiana, central Indiana.
Talking with Congressman Greg Pence this morning. Congressman, finally, how about some comments on the discussions we're hearing about defunding police? That's something that kind of, might I say, sticks in your craw a bit?
Yeah, it sure does, John. I'm 100% against defunding the police. I think that doesn't make any sense. You know, here in Indiana, we live with our law enforcement officers. We know them. We grew up with them. We went to high school with them, or they live across the street from us. So we have a community relationship with law enforcement here, unlike some of the big cities where there's just this detachment. But let me tell you what I did. We do need to address the real sense out there that the police and law enforcement aren't there for certain segments of the group, and I helped introduce the Justice Act. I'm a co-sponsor, and in that Justice Act, instead of defunding the police, we've increased accountability, transparency, and frankly, support funding for them. There's a number of components. It's called also the Scott-Stauber bill. It was introduced in both the House and the Senate, and as a co-sponsor, I hope we get that moved through at this very week, at the end of this week. But we're going out there Thursday and Friday, and that's gonna provide some assistance, like body cam funding and additional training to help those police departments that maybe could use a little more training. But I want to go on record and say 99.9% of all law enforcement are good, hardworking, community-dedicated people. I really kind of get, I don't agree with when folks say the vast majority. I think it's 99.9%, at least where I grew up it is.
Comments this morning of Congressman Greg Pence. Congressman, thanks for your time. Best of luck.
All right, thanks, John. Have a good day.